Hello and welcome to the Heart-Centered Therapist Podcast. I'm your host, Sindee Gozansky, a therapist who believes in leading with love, both in our professional work and in every aspect of our lives. Whether you're a new or experienced therapist seeking to deepen your connection with clients and yourself, you're in the right place. And if you're here to find ways to nurture your own well-being, grow personally, or expand your mental health knowledge, you're also in the right place. Join me as we dive deep into the art and science of therapy, with compassion at the core of every conversation. Because here we believe that leading with love and being heart-centered isn't just a practice, it's a way of life. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Therapist Podcast. I'm Sindee Gozansky, your host. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate that you're tuning in. It means so much to me. You have no idea. I really do this because therapist education, therapist identity, and community means so much to me and how I practice and what I want for therapists to be able to experience in our work, in our careers that we put so much of our heart and our service into. So thank you for listening. Today, the episode is going to be a short and sweet solo episode all about trusting the process, embracing risk and imperfection in therapy. And I think this sounds like it should be so easy to do. We're therapists. We're supposed to be able to be flexible and be okay with everything. But when it comes to us sitting in the chair, sometimes being able to take a risk or be okay with our imperfection, our fears of failure, and making mistakes is a lot harder. In our graduate programs and beyond, we have spent years honing our skills, reading textbooks, practicing interventions, and learning what we are taught to believe is, quote, the right way to do therapy. But when we step into the therapy room, real life happens. Clients don't follow scripts. Emotions run high. Things rarely go as planned. And it doesn't matter if you're a new or an experienced therapist. Sometimes the stakes are just high. You know that panicky feeling that comes up that maybe you've said the wrong thing, or you don't have the right answer, or maybe you didn't take that brave, bold step because you're afraid, what if I mess up? There's so much at stake right now for this individual, for this couple, for this family. And here's the truth. You will mess up sometimes. I mess up, and it's okay. In fact, it's part of the process. It's necessary in order for us to grow as therapists and to be able to do better with each of our interactions. We have to be willing to risk failure. We have to be willing to embrace the moments of uncertainty, of not knowing what may be the exact right thing to do. And we need to lean into the discomfort of not having it all figured out all the time. Today, we're going to explore why taking risks and embracing imperfection is not only inevitable, but essential to becoming a better therapist, to becoming that therapist that will make you feel like, this is who I am, this is my identity, I've got this. Whatever the client has, bring it, I've got this. So, let's get right in. First, I want to address, because this is so common, especially for students and new therapists, that fear of looking incompetent. When we're new, there is this fear that we're going to look like we don't know what we're doing, or that we feel we have to have all the answers in order to be credible, in order to be seen as competent by the person sitting across from us. And what if they think we're guessing? What if they think we're making it up or winging it? If you've thought any of these things, oh my goodness, welcome to the club. You're so normal and you are going to be a great therapist, because the sooner we can let that go, the more you can be present and show up fully in the therapy session. Part of the problem is that we get fed so much information, it's overwhelming. We have a lot that we carry in our heads. We're smart. We have a lot of information, a lot of approaches, a lot of techniques, all kinds of things that we can pull from. And sometimes we over-rely on the information. We over-rely on theory. And especially for new therapists or students, it's very easy to over-rely on this clinical theory or psychoeducation or even therapist jargon, therapy babble, to mask our own insecurity about wanting to prove that we're competent. But here's the thing. When we over-rely on information giving, it creates a distance between us and the client. Unless the client is specifically asking you for some psychoeducation, they're not really looking for information. They're looking for you to hold that space for them. They're looking to be heard, to connect on a deeper level. You know what? Deep down, validation. It's just validation. I tell my student interns all the time, you cannot over-validate your client, and I'm sharing that with you too. And if you're a really experienced therapist and you're feeling so tired this week, try this. I give you this as an experiment to take a risk. Try just validating your clients every single session, acknowledge and validate them, and see how this week goes and let me know. Send me an email. I really want to know. Okay, the other fear that gets in the way is fear of silence. This makes a lot of new therapists nervous. It makes a lot of all of the therapists nervous because we tend to want to fill in that silence with giving advice or asking questions or, again, trying to look like we're competent, we're capable, we're smart. Let's just keep this going. They're paying me. And you know what? The client does not get that much silence in their regular lives. So it's also okay if they pay you for silence. What a reframe. Let them pay you for the silence because that is forcing them to think. That's forcing them to get quiet. That's forcing them to not be able to shift and turn to their phone and scroll. They're there with you. And you know what? Right now, that is money very well spent in our culture. So when you are worried about how you're going to come across and you think about the reflex of going into your toolbox of information, of approaches, of techniques, of psychoeducation, the client really wants not to be fixed that way, not to be informed that way, but really to have understanding and connection. And I've done this too. I've rushed in to give advice. I've rushed in to ask another question, or worse, ask a string of questions. And here's where I want to challenge you, because this is something that you can use over and over. When you go and see your own therapist, are you actually looking for a specific answer, or are you hoping that your therapist is going to help you come up with that answer from your own wisdom, that you will be able to have that aha and figure it out for yourself versus the therapist telling you what the answer is or giving you their advice? Moving on, the next point I want to make is about embracing imperfection. Sometimes there of course, are those moments where we don't have the exact intervention, response, or beautiful insight to hand over to our clients. Sometimes things like this happen, and this happens for me. I can't tell you how many times I'd be in session with somebody who's struggling with really chronic depression, and maybe they say things like this: why does it always feel this way? Why can't I just be happy? Okay, let that just go right there to that place where you have that righting reflex, where you have that sense that, oh, if I could just maybe soothe them in this moment, if I could just jump in with a solution or offer some psychoeducation. And what we can learn to do instead is to pause, to realize we absolutely do not have the perfect answer for them. The only thing that we have is to be able to sit with them in their pain. And so you can say something like, I don't have the answer, but I can sit with you in this. I'm here with you now. How hard that must be for you to feel this and wonder if you could be happy. I want that for you too. And it's also really, really okay with me to be here with you right now with what you're experiencing. There's no pressure for you to get better. It's okay for us to just be here together. That's a lot different than offering a list of things that they might try, looking into their coping skills or their supports. You're just saying you don't have the answer either, but you're here with them. So that kind of uncertainty and embracing the imperfection of us being human and not having the answers can then create that human to human connection that is so healing just by being present. And this is what is so hard for schools and master's programs and interventions to teach us, that eventually we can trust that the therapeutic process will unfold in its own time, but it's got to start from this moment, from this place, versus from a specific technique. And all of this is completely connected to taking risks. And we take risks in the work we do as therapists. And I wanted to give an example of taking a risk as a couples therapist. Of course, when you're doing couples therapy, you're often balancing two perspectives, and it can feel daunting and overwhelming to take risks when both partners are looking to you for guidance and there are hot emotions or flat emotions in the room. Usually there's one partner who's dominating the conversation more, another who may be retreating and shutting down a little bit. So in this case, let's just explore what is a way for you to take a risk as a couples therapist, right? The wife, let's say, is escalating, demanding for connection and answers. You are ready, observing the pursue, withdraw dynamic that's entrenched for them. And the husband is just starting to check out, to shut down. And so here you are in their cycle. And the therapist actually must take a risk, because if you don't, then they're going to just have the same fight, different issue, same fight that they always have, and they don't need you for that. So perhaps as the therapist, you might take a risk by going deeper into the husband's emotional withdrawal, checking with the wife, hey, is it okay if I just check in? Let's just call him John. If I just check in with John for a minute, and instead of focusing on the surface level interaction, maybe just say, hey, I see you pulling away. What's that about? What's happening for you as you start to shut down? Perhaps he says something like this. Well, I've learned over time, talking only makes it worse. So this is what I do. Talking just makes it worse. Okay. And then you can ask him, what is worse? Well, I'm already feeling inadequate. I can't process this fast enough for her. I can't get it right for her. And if I respond now, then I'm going to be even a bigger failure to her, and I can't risk that. And why is that? Well, because she's important to me. Maybe it's not going to go that cookie cutter, but this is what we're looking for. Because when you take a risk, then one of the partners takes a risk, and the next thing is the wife all of a sudden might soften. She might not realize that this withdrawal, this shutdown on her husband's part is about his own fears. It's about him feeling like he's a loser and he doesn't want to be seen that way to her, versus her thinking he doesn't care about her. So it can really deepen your therapy to take a risk. It can really feel like a leap when you are going to work with one partner instead of doing some basic communication skills. But in couples therapy and emotion-focused couples therapy, which is primarily what I do, when we can access secondary emotions and primary emotions, we get profound breakthroughs with our couples. And it's not about controlling the situation or teaching certain statements as much as it is about creating a safe place. And we do that by showing the couples that we're going to take a risk and we're going to ask something, and then they can also feel like they can take a risk too. It shifts the whole interactional cycle, and it's going to shift your therapy because you actually will be seen as very confident when you take risks, when you can be bold and gently, lovingly confront and challenge the status quo in the room. It's all about trusting your intuition, not being afraid to ask the tough questions, even if it feels like you're stepping into some uncomfortable territory. That's part of what we need to be able to manage is the discomfort of something unknown. And of course, this is what we're helping our clients with, so we need practice in it too. I want to give you another example about taking a risk. Maybe the client brings up a specific issue, topic, problem that you don't have any experience working with. And they want an answer from you. They want your help with this. What do you say? This is when you want to choose being authentic with your clients. You want to let go of that fear of not knowing, of looking silly or looking incompetent, because your clients will sense it. And you are being asked and invited into a trust with them. They've asked you about this topic that's probably pretty personal, and it's okay if you don't know. You can, instead of deflecting, you can say, look, I actually haven't worked with this before, but I'm so committed to working with this for you, with you, collaboratively. I have a colleague I can contact. We will help you figure this out together. I'm so glad you brought it up. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. What are some of your thoughts about this as you tell me today in here about this issue? Today's episode is brought to you by Berries, the HIPAA-compliant note-taking platform that makes your therapy documentation effortless. I am using Berries now with my group practice, and it is amazing. Berries says goodbye to the burden of mental health notes using automated note creation. You simply record your notes or record your session, and the platform instantly transforms them into a fully customizable format. Plus, your recordings are not stored, ensuring complete privacy. Berries is personalized, affordable, and comes with an extremely generous trial period. And for listeners of this podcast, use the code Sindee50, that's SINDEE 50, for $50 off your first month. With Berries, you can reclaim your time and focus on what matters most, your clients, not your notes. It's truly made me enjoy being a therapist again. I encourage you to check out the link in the show notes for Berries. Use my discount code Sindee50 and get started today. All right. Well, if you've made it this far, I'm going to conclude with a few practical strategies all around this topic of taking risks, being courageous, and embracing imperfection. Okay. Number 1, embracing not knowing. It is okay to say, I don't know. It does not make you any less of a professional. What it does is it makes you human. So if a client is processing something difficult and you don't have the perfect response, it's completely great to say, I'm not sure what the best answer is here, but let's work through it together. How powerful is that? Number 2, take your shot. Take that risk. Try something new, even if it feels risky. This could be using a new therapeutic technique, something you just learned, or allowing for a little more silence in the session. Maybe you've read about a new somatic experience. Actually, I just did some training on this, and I encouraged my therapist to give it a try. Don't wait until you feel like an expert to try it out. In fact, you can introduce it with transparency to your client. Hey, I've been learning about this. I think it might help us here. Would you be open to trying this new grounding technique? Let's try it out and see what comes up. Are you open to that? Number 3, view your mistakes as feedback, not as failure. This is something I revisit all the time. Of course, we want to succeed, but we only succeed every time we make a mistake. So if something doesn't go as planned, try not to beat yourself up and instead look at what you're learning from that experience. A great example in therapy that happens again and again is sometimes we misjudge how quickly a client could process something, and we might jump in too soon with a deeper insight or shifting to a more primary emotion. And instead of a failure, just reflect on, okay, my timing is a little off. My pacing is a little too fast. I can pace my interventions better in the future. Number 4, allow for flexibility in your approach. It's important to have structure. I 100% agree with that. And we don't want the structure to constrain us or trap us. So we want to be able to pivot. Being therapists requires us to be creative, organic, and to really be flexible and pivot. This helps to foster that connection and trust and authenticity. I know so many of you are so excited to help your clients, and you have this agenda and you read all about something before you walk into session with them. And then the issue they bring up is completely separate. And you know what? You are still going to be fine. You prepared, you're a trained psychotherapist, and it's okay. Just listen to what's in front of you in the room, and your client will be even more grateful for your help. Number 5, use self-compassion as a learning tool. Every time that you risk being imperfect, remember to practice self-compassion. Remember to check in with yourself. Put that hand over your heart and say, it's okay, I'm okay, I've got this. We are human as therapists, and we won't always get it right. So instead of critiquing yourself, ask how you can use your experience to be more attuned to your client the next time around. And last, number 6, celebrate your risks. As therapists, we can tend to focus on what went wrong or review the whole thing in our heads. What could we have done better? And what serves us even more is when we can celebrate that we took a risk. We tried something new, even if it didn't go perfectly. That is real growth. So if you try a technique that you're not confident in, and it maybe didn't even have the impact you wanted, I want you to recognize that was a victory because you tried it, you used it. Here's to future sessions where you can really embrace risk and imperfection. Whether you're a new therapist or have years of experience, growth doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from stepping out, stepping into the unknown, being willing to make mistakes, and trusting yourself and trusting the process. So the next time you find yourself in a session where things feel uncertain or off script, pause, breathe, ground yourself, and sink into that realization that this is the opportunity. Something that is off is the chance for things to shift, for real change and healing to happen. It's in these imperfect moments that we're going to become better therapists and also help our clients heal and grow even more. Thank you so much for listening. I am so grateful for you, my friend. I hope that you have a great week. And until next week, stay heart-centered. Thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe or share with a friend. And I'd love to connect with you and continue our heart-centered conversations over on Facebook in the Heart-Centered Therapist community or on Instagram at Heart-Centered Therapist. Let me know which episode was your favorite or what topics you'd love to hear more about. Your feedback helps me create valuable content for everyone who is leading with love in their work and life. Until next week, remember to lead with your heart because it's not just what we do, it's who we are. Stay heart-centered.